Havana Harbor, February 15, 1898. Battleship Maine floats peacefully under Cuban stars. Sailors sleep below deck, unaware history explodes tonight. Washington politicians debate intervention. Nobody knows this ship's destruction drags America into war, empire, and a new century of global power, reshaping everything. Captain Charles Sigsbee writes letters in his cabin. The evening feels ordinary crew relaxed. Watches set. Tropical air warm. At 9:40, he signs his final letter. Then comes a roar swallowing everything. Metal screams. Men die instantly. Maine tears apart in fire, taking 266 souls. Newspapers scream vengeance before investigators arrive. William Randolph Hearst prints bold headlines. Remember the Maine, to hell with Spain. His rival, Joseph Pulitzer, matches fury with fury. Truth matters less than circulation. Yellow journalism transforms tragedy into rage, pushing America toward war. Nobody understands yet desperately wants. Step back. Why does Cuba matter? Spain ruled this island for centuries, yet rebellion burns constantly. Cuban fighters want freedom. Spanish soldiers want control. American business wants sugar plantations. President McKinley wants peace. Everyone wants something different. And Maine's explosion makes compromise impossible forever. José Martí died 3 years earlier. Cuba's poet warrior killed fighting Spanish troops. He dreamed of independence without American masters. His words still echo through rebel camps. Once the United States is in Cuba, who will drive them out? Now his nightmare begins. Maine gives Washington its perfect excuse. McKinley hesitates. He's no warmonger, but Congress demands action. Theodore Roosevelt, Assistant Navy Secretary, calls him weak, spineless. Roosevelt wants war desperately, sees opportunity where McKinley sees catastrophe. Young politicians always love distant battles. Old soldiers remember the cost. History favors recklessness this time. Spain offers concessions autonomy for Cuba, investigations, apologies. Madrid knows its empire crumbles, navy rusts, treasury empties. Fighting America means certain defeat. But honor demands resistance. The Spanish court chooses pride over survival. Sometimes, nations prefer glorious death to humiliating surrender, regardless of consequences. April 25, 1898. Congress declares war. American boys enlist eagerly, imagining adventure. Mothers weep privately. Newspapers celebrate publicly. Roosevelt immediately resigns, forms a volunteer cavalry regiment. He calls them Rough Riders Cowboys, college athletes, adventurers. War becomes their personal playground, history their stage. The Navy strikes first, targeting Spain's Pacific Fleet in Manila Bay. Commodore George Dewey received secret orders months before war started. Roosevelt sent them. Now Dewey sails into history. His mission: destroy Spain's Asian squadron, open Philippines for American control. Empire begins far from Cuban shores. May 1st, dawn breaks over Manila. Dewey's squadron approaches silently. Spanish Admiral Montojo knows his ships are obsolete, his position hopeless. Still, he orders battle. At 5:30, Dewey speaks calmly. "You may fire when ready, Gridley." Shells are across water. By noon, Spain's Pacific Fleet burns. Not one American dies in combat at Manila Bay. Spain loses over 300 men. Victory stuns everyone. Americans expected harder fighting. Spaniards expected better results. Europeans expected America to fail. Instead, Dewey becomes overnight hero. His face sells newspapers, cigars, commemorative plates. War feels easy, glorious, destined. Filipino rebels watch from shore, confused. "I am Emilio Aguinaldo. I fought Spanish rule for years, suffered exile, returned hoping for independence. Americans promised help liberating my homeland." But Dewey's victory raises uncomfortable questions. Are these liberators or new conquistadors? Will they leave after victory? I suspect the answer already. Meanwhile, Tampa, Florida becomes chaos. Soldiers gather without organization, no proper supplies, transport plans, coordination. Volunteers wear wool uniforms in tropical heat. Food spoils. Trains arrive empty while thousands wait. Roosevelt's Rough Riders push ahead of regular troops, stealing transport space. Privilege always jumps the line. They sail for Cuba in June, crowded transports rolling through Gulf storms. Men vomit constantly. Horses panic below deck. Disease spreads faster than orders. The invasion fleet looks less like military precision, more like desperate improvisation. Spanish commanders watch through telescopes, amazed Americans attack so recklessly yet succeed. Landing at Daiquiri Beach proves comedic tragedy. Horses pushed overboard must swim ashore. Equipment sinks. Soldiers stumble through surf carrying rifles overhead. No Spanish resistance appears, they've withdrawn inland. Americans congratulate themselves on brilliant tactics. Actually, they're just lucky. Luck matters more than planning sometimes. The jungle closes around them immediately. Heat, insects, disease, Cuba's real enemies emerge. Men collapse from sunstroke. Uniforms rot with sweat. Drinking water turns foul. Spanish snipers kill randomly from dense vegetation. American commanders realize tropical warfare differs completely from frontier fighting or Civil War tactics they studied. Las Guasimas, June 24th. Rough Riders encounter Spanish troops entrenched in thick jungle. Roosevelt dismounts, leads men forward on foot. Bullets snap through leaves like angry hornets. Soldiers die confused, unable to see enemies. Spanish Mauser rifles outrange American weapons significantly. Technology matters. Courage cannot overcome superior firepower alone. Still, Americans push forward through sheer aggression and numbers. Spanish forces withdraw strategically, preserving strength. Roosevelt declares victory, calls the fight glorious. Newspaper correspondents praise his leadership. Back home, headlines celebrate American courage. Nobody mentions 16 dead, 52 wounded. Glory requires selective memory and careful editing. San Juan Heights dominates Santiago. Whoever controls those hills controls the city, controls eastern Cuba. Spanish General Linares fortifies positions, waits for Americans. His soldiers dig trenches, mount artillery, prepare final defense. They know reinforcement won't come. Still, they'll fight. Honor demands blood, even when victory proves impossible. July 1st arrives brutally hot. American troops advance uphill into withering fire. Officers fall immediately. Plans dissolve into chaos. Soldiers huddle behind whatever cover exists, pinned down completely. For hours, nobody moves. Spanish rifles kill methodically. American commanders lose control entirely. Victory seems distant, casualties mounting, heat unbearable. Then, something shifts. Maybe courage, maybe desperation, maybe collective madness. You watch soldiers rise together, charge uphill screaming. Rough Riders storm Kettle Hill while infantry takes San Juan Hill proper. Roosevelt rides his horse briefly, making himself the perfect target. Bullets miss somehow. He reaches the summit alive, triumphant. Spanish troops retreat toward Santiago, defense collapsing finally. Americans control the heights, artillery, momentum. But victory cost dearly, over 200 dead, 1,200 wounded. Disease kills more than combat. Yellow fever, malaria, dysentery spread through camps. Medical supplies run desperately short. Glory photographs better than gangrenous wounds. Spanish Admiral Cervera sits trapped in Santiago Harbor. His fleet can't escape. American ships blockade the entrance. Staying means slow starvation. Sailing out means certain destruction. His superiors order him to fight anyway. On July 3rd, Cervera reluctantly obeys. He leads 6 ships toward inevitable doom, sacrificing men for pride. The naval battle lasts 4 hours. American ships circle Spanish vessels like wolves surrounding prey. Modern guns destroy obsolete armor. Cervera's flagship burns first. Other ships beach themselves desperately. Spanish sailors jump into shark-infested waters. Americans rescue survivors generously. Admiral Cervera surrenders with dignity. 323 Spaniards die. 1 American. Santiago surrenders July 17th. Spain's Caribbean empire crumbles completely. Cuban rebels who fought for years watch Americans accept Spanish surrender formally. Nobody invites Cuban generals. America treats Cuba like prize won, not ally supported. Martí's warnings echo louder. Liberation looks suspiciously like occupation already forming. Puerto Rico falls next, barely fighting. American troops land August, meeting little resistance. Spain's government knows everything's lost. Peace negotiations begin in Paris. Spanish diplomats arrive, defeated, desperate. American diplomats arrive demanding everything: Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, Philippines. The victors write history. Losers sign documents silently, nursing wounds. But Philippines proves complicated. Aguinaldo expected independence after helping Americans defeat Spain. Instead, Washington debates keeping the islands permanently. McKinley prays for guidance, claims God wants America, civilizing Filipinos. Aguinaldo hears this, prepares resistance. One empire replaces another. Filipinos will fight their supposed liberators for years ahead. Treaty of Paris, December 10, 1898. Spain surrenders Cuba, cedes Puerto Rico and Guam, sells Philippines for $20 million. 4 centuries of empire end formally. Spain becomes second-rate power permanently. America gains colonies unwillingly, yet eagerly. The irony escapes most Americans celebrating victory wildly. Anti-imperialists protest loudly. Mark Twain calls the war shameful conquest. Andrew Carnegie offers to buy Philippines himself, gift independence personally. Labor leaders fear colonial competition, but McKinley wins Senate ratification narrowly. America becomes an empire officially, contradicting its founding principles completely. Revolutionary ideals bend conveniently when power beckons. The war lasted 10 weeks officially. Real wars continue much longer. Cuba remains occupied for years. Philippines erupts into brutal guerrilla warfare. Aguinaldo's fighters kill American soldiers. Americans burn villages, torture prisoners. More Americans die pacifying Philippines than fighting Spain. Nobody calls it imperialism publicly, though. Yellow fever kills thousands of occupation troops. Walter Reed investigates, discovers mosquitoes transmit disease. His research saves countless lives eventually. Medical science advances through war's necessities. Strange how death's proximity produces healing knowledge. Cuba becomes a laboratory for tropical medicine. Another colonial benefit Americans congratulate themselves for providing. Roosevelt returns home a celebrity, war hero transformed into political phenomenon. He writes books, gives speeches, runs for governor. War made his career possible. Without Cuba, he's just another privileged politician. With San Juan Hill behind him, he becomes unstoppable. 2 years later, vice president. 1 year after, president? The Maine? Investigations continue for decades. Modern analysis suggests accidental coal bunker explosion, not Spanish sabotage. The war started on misunderstanding, fueled by newspaper lies, justified through manufactured outrage. 266 sailors died accidentally. Thousands more died consequently. History builds empires on tragic mistakes nobody acknowledges. Black soldiers fought bravely. 4 regiments served in Cuba, proving courage while facing discrimination constantly. They climbed San Juan Hill alongside Roosevelt's volunteers. Yet photographs erase them. Newspaper accounts minimize contributions. America celebrates white heroes only. Victory never eliminates racism. Sometimes war exposes hypocrisy more clearly than peacetime ever could. Cuban independence remains theoretical. America writes Cuba's constitution, including Platt Amendment granting Washington intervention rights. The island becomes protectorate essentially, sovereignty limited severely. American corporations purchase sugar plantations extensively. Freedom means different things to different people. Cubans learn this bitterly, repeatedly, painfully over coming decades. Philippines bleeds for years. Guerrilla warfare turns vicious ambushes, massacres, concentration camps. American soldiers adopt brutal tactics, torture prisoners, execute civilians. Reports shock Americans back home. Senate investigates atrocities cautiously, but empire continues regardless. Having paid $20 million, Washington won't abandon its purchase now, regardless. I watched them capture Aguinaldo, March 1901. Filipino resistance weakened, but continued sporadically. Some 4,200 American soldiers died total. Filipino casualties numbered hundreds of thousands, including civilians. Disease, starvation, violence destroyed communities thoroughly. The cost of empire measured in anonymous graves across tropical islands nobody locates on maps. William McKinley wins re-election easily, campaigning on prosperity and victory. 6 months later, an anarchist shoots him. Theodore Roosevelt becomes president, youngest ever. The Rough Rider reaches White House through war's doorway. He'll expand American power globally, build Panama Canal, project naval strength everywhere. Empire needs energetic leadership always. Spain never recovers fully. The disaster of '98 haunts Spanish consciousness for generations. Writers call it simply the disaster. Artists paint national melancholy. Intellectuals question everything previously certain. Losing colonies means confronting decline directly. Once mighty empires fall hard, fast. Spanish pride nurses wounds privately while the world forgets quickly. Hawaii annexed during war excitement, Congress pushed through annexation while America felt invincible. Pacific bases required for projecting power westward. Strategic thinking replaces moral hesitation during wartime fervor. Nobody remembers Hawaii's independent queen, imprisoned, overthrown, silenced. Empire swallows small nations silently, while everyone watches bigger battles elsewhere, distracted. The Caribbean becomes America's lake subsequently. Marines land repeatedly Haiti, Dominican Republic, Nicaragua. Roosevelt announces his corollary: America will police Western Hemisphere unilaterally. Monroe Doctrine transforms from defensive shield into offensive weapon. Neighbors fear Washington more than European powers now. Latin Americans remember who destroyed Spanish Empire efficiently. But consider the reporters. Stephen Crane wrote brilliantly from Cuba, capturing war's absurdity and horror honestly. Richard Harding Davis glamorized combat constantly, creating Roosevelt's legend deliberately, carefully. Their words shaped American understanding completely, permanently. Truth died first in this war. Yellow journalism proved wars could be manufactured through headlines alone. Cuban women fought too. Insurgents relied on female scouts, spies, messengers constantly. They smuggled weapons, treated wounded, maintained supply networks efficiently. Spanish troops imprisoned, tortured, executed them without mercy. American accounts ignore women entirely, systematically. History remembers male heroes exclusively, yet revolutions require everyone's courage, everyone's sacrifice. Gender erases half the story. The Spanish soldiers? Most were conscripts, poor boys forced into service, shipped to Cuba unwillingly. They fought bravely despite obsolete weapons, inadequate supplies, hopeless positions. Many sympathized secretly with Cuban independence movements. Yet duty demanded resistance anyway. They died defending empire's dying grip. History judges nations, forgets individual soldiers quickly. American business boomed afterwards. United Fruit Company expanded throughout Caribbean, controlling land, governments, economies completely. Sugar corporations dominated Cuba entirely. Mining companies exploited Philippines extensively. War opened markets, created opportunities, enriched investors tremendously. Follow the money always. Empire serves economic interests first, noble ideals second, if at all. Veterans returned home, changed forever. Some bragged about combat, others never spoke again. Many suffered from what today we'd call PTSD. No treatment existed then. They drank, fought, struggled silently, invisibly. Parades celebrated victory publicly. Private suffering remained invisible, ignored. Wars produce parades and nightmares simultaneously. Society prefers remembering the former exclusively. Maine's wreckage remained in Havana Harbor for years, rusting monument to disputed history. Eventually salvaged, examined thoroughly by investigators. Evidence suggested internal explosion, not Spanish mine after all. But truth arrived too late. War already happened, empire already built, soldiers already dead. Facts rarely reverse decisions. Momentum carries nations forward. Filipino Americans today number millions. Their presence traces back to sailors, students, workers who came after annexation. Empire creates unexpected migrations always. Conquered peoples eventually enter conquerors' lands. History circles back mysteriously. Philippines gained independence, 1946. Cuba's relationship with America remains complicated, unresolved. Imperial legacies persist stubbornly. Native American soldiers served in Cuba too. Some were veterans of frontier wars, fighting alongside the army that defeated their peoples. Complex loyalties, painful ironies. They hoped military service would prove citizenship rights. Discrimination continued anyway. America accepted their sacrifice, denied their equality. Patriotism doesn't guarantee justice ever. Guam remains American territory still. The smallest prize from that war, overlooked consistently by historians, strategic value transcends size. Pacific bases enabled later wars against Japan decades forward. Everything connects eventually. That splendid little war planted seeds for World War II's Pacific theater. History flows forward unpredictably, connecting dots retroactively. The war lasted only months, but redirected American destiny permanently, irrevocably. Before '98, America looked inward mostly. After, it looked outward, constantly, hungrily. Continental expansion ended. Overseas empire began. The psychological shift proved profound. Americans started seeing themselves as global players, exceptional nation, destined leaders of civilization. European powers watched nervously. America announced itself as rival, not junior partner anymore. Battle of Manila Bay especially impressed British, German, French observers. American industrial strength, demonstrated through rapid naval victories, signaled future challenges ahead. 20th century's power dynamics shifted slightly but significantly. Old empires noticed new competitor, emerging confidently, aggressively. You hear Theodore Roosevelt later called it a splendid little war. Easy victory, minimal casualties, maximum glory for participants. His perspective ignored Filipino deaths, Cuban disappointments, imperial contradictions entirely. Winners write history casually. Losers live history painfully. Splendid depends entirely on perspective. Standing atop San Juan Hill feels different than standing below it. The war accelerated American racism paradoxically, dangerously. Occupying Philippines required justifying colonial rule ideologically. Americans described Filipinos as children needing guidance, savages requiring civilization. Same rhetoric justified Jim Crow laws domestically. Empire abroad strengthened white supremacy at home. Imperial projects and racial oppression fed each other continuously, reinforcing dangerous ideologies. Remember the nurses. Clara Barton brought Red Cross workers to Cuba, establishing field hospitals under fire. Women treated wounded, dying soldiers daily. They contracted diseases, worked exhausted, saved countless lives. Yet military regulations prohibited women officially. They volunteered outside army structure entirely. Dedication required no official recognition. Service happened regardless of acknowledgement. Spanish prisoners of war received decent treatment generally. Americans prided themselves on civilized behavior toward defeated enemies. Same courtesy wasn't extended to Filipinos later. Racism determined who deserved Geneva Convention protections. White Europeans received respect. Brown Asians received brutality. Empire revealed American hypocrisy clearly, unmistakably, shamefully. The war cost approximately $250 million. Seems cheap for acquiring empire. But calculate compound costs: Philippine insurrection, Cuban occupations, Guantanamo Bay's permanent lease, ongoing military commitments everywhere. Empire's true price emerges slowly, paid continuously. Initial investment misleads. Maintenance costs exceed purchase price always, inevitably, exponentially over time. Some Americans opposed war throughout. Pacifists, anti-imperialists, principled skeptics questioned jingoism constantly, courageously. They lost politically, but proved prescient historically. Their warnings about imperial overreach, endless commitments, moral corruption, all came true eventually. History vindicates critics often, rewards them never. Courage includes dissenting when everyone celebrates blindly, enthusiastically. The war changed American military permanently. Navy expanded rapidly, becoming world-class fleet. Army modernized, weapons, tactics, training completely. Military budgets increased exponentially. Once America tasted global power, retreat became impossible politically. Defense spending never returns to pre-war levels. Temporary expansions become permanent establishments always. War transforms nations irreversibly forever. Consider Spanish-American veterans who lived into the 1960s. They watched America fight World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. Each conflict traced roots back to 98's imperial turn. Old soldiers saw empire's full arc initial triumph, endless complications, moral ambiguities. Some questioned everything, others justified everything. Truth lives somewhere between extremes. Maine explosion changed journalism forever. Yellow journalism's power to manufacture consent, create wars, manipulate public opinion was demonstrated conclusively, frighteningly. Subsequent wars saw similar media dynamics: Gulf of Tonkin, Iraqi WMDs, endless examples. Pattern repeats. Citizens should remember Maine differently, not as patriotic rallying cry, but as warning about manipulated outrage fueling unnecessary wars. Filipino nurses later served in World War II, defending American bases against Japanese invasion bravely. Their grandparents fought American occupation. Their parents lived under American rule. They defended American flag loyally. History's ironies pile endlessly. Former enemies become allies. Colonial subjects defend colonizers. Loyalty proves more complex than simple narratives suggest comfortably. The war established patterns lasting today. American interventions, occupation strategies, nation-building attempts, economic exploitation, all trace back to 1898's template clearly. We repeated Cuba in Vietnam, Philippines in Iraq. History doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes persistently, hauntingly. Learning from past mistakes requires acknowledging them first. America prefers celebrating victories exclusively. So, what did America become after 98? An empire reluctantly admitted, democracy partially compromised, republic stretched beyond founders' imagining. Power changes nations, fundamentally, irreversibly. Innocence, real or imagined, died in Cuba's jungles and Philippines' mountains. America emerged, transformed, stronger, richer, more influential, less certain about its founding ideals, compromised. Maine's sailors deserve the final word. They enlisted expecting peacetime service. Instead, they became casualties of forces beyond their control: imperial ambitions, yellow journalism, diplomatic failures. Their deaths sparked empire's birth. Remember them not as martyrs for manifest destiny, but as victims of circumstances beyond understanding. Their silence speaks louder than history's noise.